Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 49 of the Law Ninja Choke MMA Picks podcast. I'm joined by Will in the UK and Josh in Australia. I'm Dom, I'm based in the US, and today we're going to be talking about the UFC Mexico City card, headlined by Brandon Moreno and Kavanagh, Kavanagh. So this is the card we have here. It's not the highest quality card, is it, lads? So anything here that you're particularly looking forward to beyond the main event?
Not really. For me, this whole card feels like a prelim card before a better event, which is next week. More on that later, I think. But anyway, this whole card reminds me of the X Factor. You know how, the TV show X Factor, how the singers progress through stages and all that stuff. In this case, it's like the Dana White Contender Series fighters progress to the next fight, and so I've done a little counting here, and that's a bit of a surprise because I don't count that much when it comes to anything at all. 17 of 26 fighters here are Dana White Contender Series alumni. That's a whole lot. A few of those fighters shouldn't even be on this card or in the UFC because they lost their fight in that Contender Series, right? So it leaves me questioning my sanity when I see this. I feel like maybe they just made it for the sake of filling up the gaps in the year events, like how they tally up all the year events and make all the events for that year or whatever. This entire card, it doesn't really matter who wins because there's going to be no progression in their career. There's going to be no ranking or no rank improvements at the end of the day. At the end of the day, it's just a bundle of shit, really. The only fight that's really close on paper and on the odds is the Ailin Perez and Macy Chiasson fight, and even at a glance, that fight is puke worthy. I know that's harsh to say, but like everything else in this card is on the same level of crap. Even the main event. I mean, we have heard complaints from all kinds of pundits around in the UFC or like who follow the UFC. No one wanted this fight. No one really asked for Kavanagh to come back. And I was on Twitter this morning and I saw, oh, Kavanagh's back to fight Moreno. And I'm like, back from what? The dead? He just got knocked out like a few months ago. So how he got this spot, I don't know. Surely there was more better options out there that could have fought Moreno. But apparently not really. I would have accepted Moreno Vera. Vera or Moreno moving up to 135 or whatever, right? Like that would have been fun, but no, you had to be the guy that got knocked out by Charles Johnson. So yeah, I don't know anymore. I'm gonna get a brain aneurysm just from talking about this, and yeah, that's my terrible tangent.
How about you, Will?
I mean, honestly, when Josh started off saying that he thinks that it's like a prelim card, I was quite surprised because I wouldn't even say this is prelim worthy. Yeah, that stat about how many of these fighters are from Contender Series really does highlight it. I've been saying for years that Contender Series is like a talent laundering scheme, and we see more and more of it every day. The UFC has basically flushed out the entire like scope of MMA to basically create their own stars, so they can hype up anyone they want because they've come from Contender Series. They have a highlight reel package that they entirely own on somebody, and then they can just create the sound bites. I mean, Joe Pyfer's the best example. How many times did we hear "Be Joe Pyfer" when he was on the come up? And it's just like, all right, we get it. Anyway, we shouldn't rant too long on this one. At the end of the day, the card is happening and it will be violence, and we're going to watch pretty much every second of it. So let's be honest. Who are we to complain? I mean, if you're Mexican, it's fun, and sometimes these like Mexico versus the world cards are quite fun, but yeah, talent-wise, no one's really excited for anything here. The main event is a weird one. I mean, if Kavanagh pulls it off, it could be a great opportunity to launch him into stardom, because I'm sure he'll leapfrog a lot of people in the rankings if he pulls it off. But yeah, aside from that, I couldn't give a damn about the outcomes of any of the fights, to be honest.
Yeah, I'm with you guys. I think that this is probably the worst card we've had in recent times. But I think it only gets worse, doesn't it? So we might end up being banned for this card after the next week's card. But let's see how it goes. And yeah, we didn't do our early leans recording this week, so we picked a few fights to quickly go through here in brief, and fighters we think will win before we go on to focus in a bit more detail on these fights in the red. So yeah, starting with Will and Chiasson. Why do you think Chiasson is going to win?
I just think that he is better than Bunez, pretty simply. They're both relatively well-rounded guys. I think Bunez is a lot more of a wrestler-grappler type, but Chiasson is a capable Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu grappler himself. We saw the way he handled, I suppose, the test of Tatsuro Taira. He didn't get embarrassed in that fight, which I think a lot of people were actually impressed by. And there's just like strong levels of dangerousness, disparity on the feet. And I think with every fight starting standing, Chiasson is going to ask some real questions of Bunez and probably put him in too much danger, and he'll probably therefore get finished. I mean, honestly, like I have, spoiler alert, have bet Chiasson in a parlay. He was like the only parlay-ish kind of like odds around like the early -200 mark at the start of the week. So like, you know, I think everybody and their dog's probably on Chiasson this week simply because he's like the only option. But I think the juice was worth the squeeze at those early -225 odds or whatever they were. So I think it's a safer play. But yeah, I just think he'll be far more dangerous and dominate over the different realms of MMA personally.
Yeah, I think that was a good call on Chiasson. The odds have moved on him a lot, and yeah, I also have him in a parlay. I think I took your advice there. So, Josh, what do you like about Luna in the matchup against Pacheco?
It comes down to the age, really. I mean, he's 13 years younger, and this is a young man's game, right? So I do think that he is going to be fairly excitable in that cage. You know, he's 7-0. He's very young. He is in front of a big ass crowd, maybe, and he's gonna just use that crowd energy to like hunt that finish. And when you look at Pacheco's record, all of his wins have been against really, really poor quality opponents, and he's also 0-1 in the UFC, 0-1 in Dana White's Contender Series. I just can't see how he's still here. Like he's like the Artem Lobov, you know, back in the day, Artem Lobov, Conor McGregor's teammate, whatever. He's like that in the UFC. We don't know why he's here, but he's here, right? So I just think that Luna is the way to go. He has that 4 inches of reach, you know, and when he fought Quang Lee, he was hungry for that finish. And I can only imagine him being in front of us, all that crowd, all the Mexicans going crazy, you know, just him looking for that finish. I just can't pick Pacheco here. Like, I can't even give him a little bit of hype or a little bit of confidence that he could maybe cause an upset. It's going to be all Luna. And yeah, that's that's it.
Yeah, and I'm not gonna argue with you there. It seems like a kind of steep price to pay for a debutant. I think he's more than -400. But yeah, for all the reasons you said, it kind of actually makes sense. So I understand the love for him. And yeah, I thought at the end of the recording last week, I actually thought that Douglas Da Silva de Andrade was someone that I would potentially bet on because he's a known UFC quantity. He has like steroidal kind of look about him. He's coming up in weight here against debutant Javier Reyes. But then I looked into it a bit more, and I've got to be honest, even though it is steep again for a debutant, I think Reyes should probably win this fight. He's obviously younger, bigger. He's a big featherweight. and he's actually pretty experienced at featherweight. So okay, he doesn't have many fights in the UFC. He just won his Contender Series fight in a very spectacular fashion. But he's only losing really to really good fighters. So he lost to a guy called Chris McCarthy, who's a wrestler, and just like basically it was a wrestling match. So I don't think Douglas Da Silva Andrade, at his ripe old age of 40, has neither the gas tank nor the inclination to wrestle. I think he will mix in wrestling, because if he starts getting beat up on the feet, that's probably a good way to go. But you know, Reyes is a mixed martial artist. He likes to wrestle himself, so I don't think wrestling is necessarily the best thing, the best way for Douglas to win the fight. I think the way that Da Silva Andrade can win the fight is basically with a KO, because I think he's going to get outworked and outvolumed on the feet. And yeah, I just think that the price is pretty steep on Reyes, but he should win. That's my take on that one. And so yeah, with that, looking at the card, we're now going to move on to the main event. So in the main event, we have what is essentially a striker versus striker matchup. Brandon Moreno will be the home favorite fighting in front of his fans at Mexico City against the young prospect Lona Kavanagh, who, as Josh mentioned, you know, it's a bit strange that he's actually getting this opportunity when he was knocked out by Charles Johnson just a few months ago. And yeah, I think this is hopefully going to be an exciting main event. Kavanagh is a very, very promising prospect. He's got a very good stand-up game. And Brandon Moreno, do I need to say much about him? He's been in the UFC for an eon. So I think he has 19 UFC fights, which is the first thing that really stands out about this. So Lona Kavanagh has 4 UFC fights. I think 5 if you include his Contender Series. Sorry, it's the other way around. He's got 4 in total, so 3 UFC fights. Is that right? No, it's 4 UFC fights. So 5 if you include Dana White's Contender Series. That's right. And yeah, what's there to like about Lona? So on the right-hand side, I put some things I like about him that I noticed in the tape. He's got great footwork. He's very evasive. He's got good movement. He's fast. He's powerful, and he's got good kicks. And of course, he's the younger fighter here. I think he's 26 or 27, based on his birthday here. Yeah, the negatives, as I mentioned, he's really lacking in UFC experience. He's only got 4 UFC fights plus the Dana White Contender Series. He's coming here on short notice, so I think he was given a total of 6 weeks notice. And I think there should be a cardio concern here, because he's going to be fighting at elevation in Mexico City. And it's his first 5-round fight. So there's another experience, you know, footnote is that, yes, whilst he's just got 10 professional fights, he's never fought 5 rounds. So yeah, it's a big question mark there. And you know, I don't need to say much about Brandon Moreno at this point. We know a lot about him. He's got great boxing. He's got phenomenal experience. He's only fought the best of the best at flyweight. You know, trilogy against Davison Figueiredo. He's got cardio for days. He's volume. He's got output. He's durable. But what is there potentially to not like about Brandon at this stage of his career? He's battle worn. So he's been knocked down. He was knocked down 3 times in one of the Figueiredo fights, and he just looked a little bit off pace in his recent fight against Tatsuro Taira. I rewatched that last night, and it wasn't as bad as I thought it was when I watched it live. So I was actually in the arena to watch Moreno versus Taira, and it was, you know, I was betting on Moreno in that fight. I was thinking that his jiu-jitsu would sort of keep the fight standing. You know, in the end, Taira finished Moreno unequivocally in the 2nd round. It wasn't a bad stoppage. I just think that Moreno just wasn't good enough on the mat to keep pace with Taira in the end. Then there's this aspect of motivation, which I think, you know, is always a question if you've been to the mountaintop, but we saw that with Strickland over the weekend. It doesn't mean that you suddenly can't fight. So the motivation one is a question mark. You know, he's talked in interviews this week about wanting to get back to the belt. So, you know, maybe it's not the fairest negative here, but that is something, you know, to wonder about when you've been the champion. You've had so many wars. You don't need money anymore. You know, what are you fighting for? And the only other slight, again, this is a slight knock, is the urgency factor. Sometimes he looks like he doesn't put his, you know, foot on the pedal, and he kind of lets his opponents build into fights. So he often goes 5 rounds in many fights. Doesn't finish many people, which is a good thing for Lona, because it will give him an opportunity to probably look good early. And yeah, I mean, my read on this fight is I think that Kavanagh is going to look good early. I think he can maybe steal round 1 or round 2. But I think round 3, 4, 5, I think Moreno is going to take over, as he has done in so many fights. I think he's going to take over. I think he's going to, unfortunately, I think he's going to dish out a vet lesson to Kavanagh. I think Kavanagh can survive. So my kind of read on the fight is Moreno is going to win this fight in rounds 4, 5, or decision. That's a prop that I usually play in 5-round fights if I like a fighter, and I think that they're going to win by decision. But I haven't got odds for that. But Will tells me it should be plus money, so potentially that's interesting. If you like the Kavanagh side, I think a safer way to play him would be to give him a points handicap, which means he gets given 5.5 points on the judges' scorecards, which means if it's a close-ish fight, he only needs to win 1 round on 2 judges' scorecards and 2 rounds on the final judges' scorecard. And I think fight goes to decision is even money. I kind of like that as well. But I haven't played that. So, and talking about the Kavanagh money line being plus 200, at first I kind of gawked at it and it was like that seems a bit wide if this fight is standing. But I think, you know, it's probably fair where it is. The Kavanagh money line at plus 200. At first, I was thinking that could hold a lot of value. I'm not too sure. I wouldn't resent anyone taking it. I had a pop myself on that, but I'm at this point after taping the fight, I'm kind of thinking Moreno is highly likely to win this fight. And yeah, plus 200 is I think if it was a bit higher than plus 200, I think there'd be some value there. But I'm expecting Moreno to win this. What about you guys? How do you think this fight plays out?
I don't know how this fight's going to play out, because it's so hard to get a read on Moreno, because whenever he fights, it's like he's playing around a lot, right? Like as you said, the urgency isn't really there sometimes, right? He fights, but he also spars almost. It's like he takes turns. Okay, you strike first, then I strike first. That kind of stuff, right? What intrigues me the most is that Moreno has never really been. And this is controversial. I do apologize if I piss off a Moreno fan out there. But Moreno has never really been a top-tier talent, in my opinion. Like, he's always been a featured prelim level fighter. And the reason why he's in this position in the first place, being a ex-champ, being someone who's fought Figueiredo 25 times, whatever, all that crap, I feel like it's because flyweight is in a weird diluted state still. Like, it's very watered down. And this has nothing to do with the fight, by the way. Like, I'm going to leave that to you, Dom, and you, Will, to talk seriously. But for me, I can't really string together a sentence here that's very evocative of a breakdown. I just don't know how this fight's going to play out, really. It's, as I said, it's hard for me to judge how Moreno is going to fight. But as you said, Dom, Kavanagh, he hasn't fought in 5 rounds before. And I feel like that's going to be the key thing here. And that first odd you got there under potential bets, Moreno wins in round 4 or 5 with decision. That's going to be something I'm going to take as well. That's good. I can't see Kavanagh having much of a chance in those later rounds. It's going to be a bit of a weird first couple of rounds, I reckon, where both fighters try and feel each other out, try and get their reads going, try and, jab here, feint there, all that stuff. But it's going to eventually pick up. And in 5-round fights, you have to go with someone who's experienced 5 rounds before multiple times, and that's Moreno. So yeah, I think Moreno has this. I think Kavanagh might have a few chances here and there, but only in the early stages of the fight. But yeah, that's my ramble. What about you, Will?
Look, I just wanted to chime in. Sorry, Will. I just remembered something that I forgot to say in the breakdown. It was the fight between Kavanagh, and not his last fight against Charles Johnson. We know how that went, but Kavanagh had a fight in London against, who did he fight in London? Apologies, I'm blanking now on the name. It was a Brazilian guy. I just watched the tape last night.
Felipe dos Santos.
Oh, that's it. Thank you. Felipe dos Santos. And it was a great fight, actually, very entertaining. Mainly entertaining because Kavanagh got split open and he was a big favourite. So he dropped the first round and then worked his way back. It was actually showed a lot of heart. And it showed that Kavanagh is a gamer, like he's going to stay in it. So he won that fight despite losing the first round. He used his grappling to hold Dos Santos down, and he did a lot of nasty ground and pound. So I'm not expecting that he will grapple Moreno, but it was good to see that he has that in his arsenal, because I think that both Moreno and Kavanagh can grapple. But the only side note for that fight, apart from the fact that he showed great heart, is that he did actually look pretty tired in round 3, because I was looking for any signs of like tiredness. And of course, he was training for 3 rounds, not 5, in the lead up to this fight. So that's something else to bear in mind, as Josh said. So yeah, Will, please give us your thoughts.
I honestly think that the two of you have covered pretty much everything. It's very much a fight that is dictated by red flags, and figuring out who's going to win is not clear cut, because you basically go back and forth for reasons that you don't want to side with both men. I honestly think it kind of comes down to like personal preference, but I suppose it is quite clear to see that Moreno does deserve the nod in terms of like who you pick to win, because like you say, that 5-round experience, fighting at home, potential slight bias in the favor of the judges, and also, yeah, it's hard to ignore Kavanagh having demonstrations of his cardio not quite being up to scratch, and also despite being on short notice is the perfect storm. It's also elevation in Mexico, which is the third part of the perfect storm. It's like the worst possible scenario you could be in if you were somebody who has questionable cardio. So it's kind of it's kind of hard to ignore that. So Moreno does deserve the nod. I'm probably a little bit more skeptical about Moreno than the two of you. So I actually did play Kavanagh for half a unit at plus 200, but I think I might try and pivot towards that points handicap, or maybe try and find another way around this, because I'm not super sold on it. I absolutely see the red flags on both sides. It's probably just a fight to just hold your hands up and say, look, Moreno probably wins, but do you want any part in, what is it, minus 250? I don't think you probably should. So yeah, I couldn't get on the money line on Moreno's side, but he probably wins it, doesn't he?
Yeah, well, as you'll see in my bets later, I have played the points handicap on Kavanagh, but after sleeping on it and doing the tape last night, I think I need to find a way to kind of hedge out of that. I think it could hit. I think it could be a close decision in the end, but I am worried very worried about the cardio. So I looked into when these fighters arrived in Mexico City, and contrary to what I heard on some of the podcasts, that Moreno hadn't arrived. That's not true. He's been in Mexico City for 3 weeks training at the UFC Mexico PI. So I think he's going to be fine. And he's fought in Mexico City many times before, and he's never had an issue with his cardio. Kavanagh arrived 2 weeks ago, so he's definitely giving it ample time. He should be acclimatized. So I don't think that's a big factor. But Moreno has been in Mexico City for longer. So yeah, it's something that maybe initially threw me off, because I was on the Kavanagh side as well, and now I've looked into it. And I think the fights with so he beat who did Moreno beat? He beat Albazi, which was pretty straightforward in a fight. Oh, Erceg. It was his sort of, I think that was in Mexico City as well, if I'm not mistaken. It was his systematic breakdown of Erceg, right, which wasn't that long ago. He just like completely nullified him in every capacity. And is Erceg better than Kavanagh? I think at this stage, if Erceg was matched up with Kavanagh, I think it would be pretty close, like probably even money maybe. So yeah, as a proxy, that was the kind of proxy I was thinking about. And Erceg has actually got similar reach to Moreno, and you can see here that Kavanagh has a 3-inch reach deficit. I just think he's gonna struggle over 5 rounds. That's the way I see it. I find it hard to see how Kavanagh could win this fight. I think he can win rounds because he's excellent. He's a really excellent prospect. But yeah, in a nutshell, should be Moreno. And with that, let's take a look at the co-main event. So Josh is going to take us through this. What hopefully is going to be a banger.
I mean, you say hopefully, but after looking at this fight a bit deep, I don't know if it will be banger. In all honesty, Vera is currently on a 3-fight losing streak. His last loss was against Ailin Zahabi, of all people. And I'm a bit of a critic when it comes to Ailin. I feel like he lacks all of the pizzazz that a fighter should have at this stage of their career. And he still outstruck Vera a lot in those 3 rounds. I mean, if you look at the stats closer, you notice that eventually Vera picks up the pace a bit after each round. But it's not enough. And that's pretty much how Vera fights. He is a very slow starter. He is someone who uses those first 5 minutes to get his reads in, calculate his attack. But in 3 rounds, in 15 minutes, you're giving away that first round to your opponent just from looking not busy. And if that's going to be the case this time, I feel like Martinez is going to be winning this fight 3 points. When it comes to Vera's offensive capabilities, he is very good at landing attacks from range. So his head kicks, body kicks, whatever, punches down the pipeline. He is very good at staying out of that clinch range or that pocket range to land his attacks. But I still think he uses too many feints compared to strikes. Like he plays that mind game of, making his opponent react, but then not really making them feel that feint, right? Or feel the reactions from the feint, right? Like he just plays too safely sometimes. And I feel like when it comes to a fight against Martinez, you have to put on the pressure against Martinez, because eventually Martinez is going to break. And we have seen Rob Font fight Martinez before. And what did we see? We saw Martinez on the back foot a lot. We saw him retreat a lot. We saw him do a modified shell to defend attacks from Font during those 3 rounds. And if Vera can push on that same pace or push a similar pace, then we are going to see an upset here. But I honestly think that Vera and his very standard way of fighting, being slow start, some activity here and there, but nothing too substantial, I feel like Martinez is going to capitalize on that slow start and just win those first couple of rounds first before Vera can get his offensive off. Speaking of Martinez, I've been a bit of a dick to him with my write-up because I gave him no real respect here. He's got 2 fights in the UFC. He has a win against Simon Oliveira, who is not very good. And then he has a win against Rob Font in the 3-round decision fight, in which he effectively blasted Rob Font with leg kicks throughout the whole fight. There have been moments in which Martinez landed a few punches on him, but the main thing that he used were those leg kicks. And if he does the same tactic here against Vera, I feel like it's only going to help him more, because Vera is a very pressure-heavy fighter when he turns up the aggression. And so in order to dissuade Vera from walking him down, Martinez is going to obviously get those leg kicks going. And being a southpaw also, that liver kick is going to be a prime attack for Martinez as well, because if you take away the liver, or if you tickle the liver a little bit, you not only hurt Vera, you also disrupt his breathing, and you make him lower his shell a bit, lower his guard, and that opens up the head kick. So I feel like no matter what Vera does here, it's going to be too little too late compared to what Martinez does throughout those 3 rounds, because Martinez is a very consistent fighter. He is someone who starts strong and has that speed as well. He can evade, he can be elusive from his target, and he's eventually going to look busier. And you know how it is with judges these days. If you look busier, you're winning. So I feel like at the end of the day, Martinez is going to look like the favorite. Vera is going to look a little bit slower, maybe fatigued. I don't know if he trains at altitude. I haven't looked into it too much, but I feel like eventually Martinez is going to win this one. And when it comes to the betting, I feel like there's going to be no finish here. I know that Vera has knocked out some opponents here and there, but he is a very stable fighter when it comes to the way he fights. He doesn't really hunt for a finish. He just peppers until a finish shows itself. And as for Martinez, I don't think he has the power to finish Vera. I think he can make him hurt, but not finished. So yeah, as you can see there, really, I reckon the fight goes the distance, and Martinez should land the more strikes. So if there's any prop for like Martinez landing more strikes, then I reckon you should take that. Yeah, who wants to go and tell me that I'm wrong or right?
Before we go to Will for his thoughts, just say, well, that was a great breakdown, Josh. I think you nailed that, to be honest. But I was going to make a flippant comment that this is white collar versus blue collar, because I think David Martinez used to be a doctor, or he trained in medicine. It looks like we have a doctor on the right-hand side against a prison inmate on the left-hand side. Sorry if that offended anyone. It's just I do believe that's the background of David Martinez. And yeah, I don't have any strong additions to what Josh said, just to say that Martinez, he fights super safe. He uses a lot of movement, right? So, yeah, I think that Vera's going to be swinging at air early, but Vera always builds into fights. So, personally, I'm hoping he can land on Martinez maybe in round 2 or round 3 and make the fight interesting. How do you see it go, Will?
Yeah, pretty much exactly that. Marlon Vera is his own worst enemy, and he has been for some time now. He was honestly my favorite fighter when he was a prelim guy. He was so reliable for a round 2 or 3 finish, and when he was fighting against like prelim level opponents, he was like just really good, like entertainment value as well. But for some reason, he seems to have obviously, you know, the level of competition gets higher. It's harder to find those finishes, but he's kind of sold out on his style a little bit in that he's always been somebody who drops round 1. That is immediately in a 3-rounder like this, an absolute cardinal sin, because he has to fight the perfect fight for the second and third. He obviously grows into things, but he doesn't fight with that urgency in round 3, because we saw it, I think, in the Zahabi fight as well. He classically lost round 1, landed a knockdown as you alluded to in round 2, and then, you know, looked like the tide was turning and it was like all to play for, but the momentum was clearly on his side. And then he just stares at Zahabi and lets Zahabi like pot shot and run circles around him, basically. And I can see David Martinez doing exactly the same thing. Vera just doesn't have that urgency in him anymore, and you know, if you bet on Marlon Vera here as an underdog, I guarantee you'll be stood up round 3, screaming at your TV, asking Vera to like go forward and throw strikes, and you'll just stand there and just watch Martinez like skirt around the outside. So yeah, this feels very clearly like a David Martinez decision. The idea of betting on more strikes landed or more significant strikes is a nice angle, because you know, it's just another opportunity to try the same thing, I think, because Martinez is minus 190, minus 200 to win by decision, which is a pretty disgusting number for a method of victory prop, especially for a guy who himself is only like minus 300 or something. But Marlon Vera is like pound for pound elite durability guy. You know, he's not easy to submit, and he's almost impossible to knock out. And Martinez is hardly a, you know, world beater on the feet. So, well, in terms of like striking power. So yeah, I feel like mostly we're just priced out of this one from like an odds perspective. So hopefully there is something for the strikes specials, but like I wouldn't bank on it. Basically, I just think this one is quite clear cut and priced as such. So there's not really anything you can attack from a betting perspective that has value, which is quite annoying. But yeah, Martinez decision is probably the way.
I do have a bit on the fight, and I'll talk about that at the end of this episode. And just to go back on the Martinez, is he a doctor gossip? He's not a doctor. He got a bachelor's in medicine, so that's where that came from. Although if you ask AI, it will say yes, he's an orthopedic surgeon, probably because there is a David Martinez somewhere in the world who is an orthopedic surgeon. So just be careful with AI. Don't ask it questions about MMA fighters. The Wikipedia page says David Martinez has a degree in medicine. And let's move on to final fight. The women's fight, the closest line fight on the card. Take it away, Will.
Everyone's collectively rolling their eyes as they see that I chose the women's MMA fight again. But as Dom said, it is the closest line fight on the card. And I think that is worth something because, you know, as we were talking about earlier on, for betting, this is the worst card in UFC history. Like everyone's like minus 400, 500. So I'm trying to do people a favor in terms of actually having a conversation about ways you could potentially make money. But unfortunately, it means that you have to trust either Macy Chiasson or Ailin Perez. So, swings and roundabouts. Right, where do I start with this one? It's a bit of a mess, I'll be honest. Ailin Perez is probably the more basic fighter to break down. She is a very gritty, dogged wrestler who wants to dive in, land a takedown, and have her way with her average top control to sort of like smother you, land some ground strikes, maybe set up a submission if she can. She is definitely not elite at any MMA skill set, except for like determination and grit. And when it comes to women's MMA, where I think that simply having enthusiasm can cover a lot where talent is lacking, because of the lack of knockouts. You can be a bit more vulnerable. You can have terrible striking defense and walk forward. And if you get your takedown, that's probably fine. It doesn't matter that you ate a couple of like heavy jabs. So yeah, I think Ailin Perez has a very good style for women's MMA simply because she's so dedicated at walking forward and getting her game going. And she goes up against Macy Chiasson, who I think is the complete opposite of that, if I'm being completely honest. I think that she is somebody who's very she just makes loads of questionable decisions. There's quite a few instances in her MMA career where she just doesn't seem to acknowledge her coach's advice and does strange things. The one example that's probably the most key fight that people would refer to when breaking this one down is the fight between Vera and Macy Chiasson, where after a very competitive round one that looked like a complete coin flip of a fight, Chiasson attempts a takedown in round two, immediately gets reversed, and quite clearly sees the strength of Vera in the clinch and in those wrestling exchanges, and proceeds to spend about 4 minutes on bottom where she just cannot get up. She clearly loses the round 10-9. She's shut out. It's probably 1-1. It might be 2-0 to Vera at this point. So what does Chiasson do? She goes straight to the wrestling in round 3 and then gets reversed and spends the rest of the fight on bottom again. So that tells me two things. Firstly, she's really not very intelligent because she decided to walk headfirst into a lesson that she's supposed to have learned, that she's going to lose this fight in a very pivotal round. And secondly, it shows that she's not got particularly good get-ups when she's on top, when she's got a heavy sort of, like pressure fighter on top of her. Ailin Perez's top control is nowhere near as good as Vieira's. I don't expect her to be so dominant in that regard, but I think that Perez's wrestling is better than Chiasson's. I think that Perez will win those exchanges when the two of them do grapple and start looking to get the fight to the floor, and I think Perez will spend more time on top. Obviously the key sort of like turnaround to that would be that Chiasson's probably the better striker than Perez. I say probably, she definitely is. But my counterpoint to that is watching Chiasson's last fight against Yana Santos. Yana Santos is a very active and mobile striker who likes to circle and stay out of range and sort of dart in and dart out. Very similar to what you would expect from a wrestler who doesn't want to strike and wants to sort of like stall over those moments. Very similar to what we saw from Jordan Levitt against Yadier Del Valle last weekend. Just not wanting to engage very much and circling a lot. And that's what Perez does. And in that Yana Santos fight, Macy Chiasson showed really bad footwork and a complete inability to cut off the cage. She just walked around in circles and followed her and followed her and followed her and landed nothing. She was constantly out of range. She overextended on every strike she threw because she was desperately trying to land. And then when she did win the footwork battle and she almost got Yana Santos up against the cage and had a much more hittable target, she threw like a massive spinning attack and lost all of that momentum. So, yeah, I'm going into too much detail here, but basically, I don't think that Chiasson is going to capitalize on the striking moments quite as much as people think, because to most people, this is a striker versus grappler affair. Whereas I think that Ailin Perez is going to quite clearly find her grappling success if she wants to, which she surely will. So I definitely lean Ailin Perez. So I think that she should be the side. I have bet her to win and over 2.5 rounds because Perez is not dangerous. And for Chiasson's, like, to her credit, she's defensively quite aware when it comes to submissions and stuff. I don't think Perez is going to have anything dangerous or damaging with her top control time. It should just be a very boring wrestling focused 15 minutes. The only thing I will quickly say to discredit Perez is cardio. The cardio conversation is one that has plagued her throughout her career. She's very intense in rounds 1 and 2 and does kind of fade in round 3. It's not a cardio death, like she won't die, but she will definitely slow down. But then you have to implore Macy Chiasson to go out there and hunt a finish. And she had a similar thing against Yana Santos, given that kind of like herky-jerky movement and like circling around a lot. She did almost lock in a rear naked choke. The commentators really hyped up how in the choke was. It really wasn't that bad. But yeah, I think it might be a bit sketchy for Ailin in round 3. I do know that. But I think she should have rounds 1 and 2 comfortably probably in the bag before she sort of tapers off. But I don't think it's going to be too dangerous. So I'm going to risk a 29-28 on Ailin Perez. Is anyone really chomping at the bit enthusiastically to tell me why I'm right or wrong here? Somebody take it away. What do you think?
Yeah, I got one thing I kind of want to talk about here, and that's the weight cut for Macy Chiasson. This is her first fight out of the USA, so this is her first fight at elevation, I believe. Like all of her fights in the UFC have been mostly in like Las Vegas or like in Vegas. So I do think that the altitude plus her weight cut issues that she has had in the past is going to probably be a double whammy for her. I don't want to talk about the fight, how it's going to play out or whatever, because frankly, it's gross, and I think Will covered all of it really well. But I do want to highlight that Chiasson, her weight cut, the fact that she's fighting at altitude for the first time in a while or forever, I feel like she's going to be out of her element, so to speak, maybe. I am intrigued to see how she will look on the scales. That's my main point of intrigue here. Like, I don't care how good the fight is. I just care about the weigh-ins, really. Yeah, that's my little rant. What about you, Dom?
No, it's a really a good point you make there, and no, it was a great breakdown by Will. I didn't look deeply into this fight, and I'm kind of regretting taking a Chiasson moneyline position. I did also take a decision no action, which I'll talk about later. But just continue with the flippant comments. I think this is another blue collar versus white collar here. We've got Ailin Perez, home economics degree and social media strategy against prison inmate Chiasson. No, I made that up. Yeah, I think that the Will's breakdown is highly accurate. I think that Perez is going to get takedowns on Macy. She doesn't have very good takedown defense. I'm having flashbacks to that god-awful Vera fight. And just rehashing that fight for me has already made me very, very sad that I bet on Chiasson. But it was only half the unit. I guess a bit like the Kavanagh situation with Will. You know, there are ways around it. So I'm thinking maybe Perez decision. I mean, the same game parlay as well that's on the screen here is also good. So let's talk about our bets.
Yeah, I'm surprised I have 3. Didn't think I'd have anything. So I started off, as I mentioned, to have a 0.5 unit bet on Kavanagh. I'm not sure if that bet makes it to fight night. I kind of placed it impulsively, thinking that it seems like a coin toss because of all of the red flags either side. But now that I think about it, I think Moreno probably deserves maybe a bit more credit than I've given him. We've talked about Chiasson and Luna. I concur with everything that we've said about those. I think that knowing that Chiasson was going to get a lot of steam coming into fight week because of how he was pretty much the only nice parlay option available from an odds perspective, I got in early there, so I'm not sure what the odds on that parlay would be now, but I highly doubt they're minus 130. And yeah, the Ailin Perez 2.5. I opted to go over 2.5 as opposed to win by decision, just obviously because you get to trim off 2.5 minutes there. I do think it will be a decision. I just felt like you can get in early doors with same game parlays sometimes, and you don't have to pay quite as much juice because the calculator is a little bit broken. So I don't know what the decision price is going to be, but I reckon it'll probably be worse than minus 115. So I might have gotten lucky there. Yeah, it's a pretty awful card. I'm surprised there are 3 bets here. Yeah, I'm probably very surprised if anyone has more. Dom, what have you got?
I have more, but I think it's probably fanciful. And yeah, I think your slate is the smallest I've ever seen since we've been doing this. Yeah, here I have the Lona Kavanagh plus 5.5 points. I talked about buyer's remorse on this one. I'm pretty confident that I will play the Moreno 4-5 all decision. I'm not able to really like cash this one out because it was bet online. I think there's a good chance it could hit, but I just don't know if it's a 50% chance. I'm now thinking it's a sub 50% chance that bet hits, so I need to do something there. Yeah, I mentioned that Chito Vera to win a round. I think that's live. Like, I'm not putting a lot on this, but at plus money, I think Chito can win round 3. Maybe Martinez, because he's very high movement, high energy, as Josh talked about. Maybe he'll slow. And as Josh mentioned, Rob Font did fight close with Martinez. I think that was a 29-28 fight. The Macy money line, again, I'm not putting much into this. I just felt like potentially could be wide, but listening to Will's breakdown, I think it's probably maybe it's where it should be. So this one, could I cash this one out? Just thinking, yeah, I could cash this one out. So I may cash that one out. That was on Polymarket. I'm going to keep the Macy decision no action of the reasons that Will mentioned. Perez is not dangerous. Macy is, a flake, right? But she's extremely good finisher by women's MMA standards. She has a lot of finishes on her record, subs and KOs. So I think I might just keep this one. I felt like equal finishing upside was definitely not accurately priced. Perez has finished no one in the UFC. Having said that, now I've said that and jinxed it, she's probably going to finish Macy because Macy's a flake. This is my biggest position. This tells you everything you need to know about the card. My biggest position is Imanol Rodriguez and Kevin Borjas to go over 1.5 rounds. I think there's a lot of hype on Imanol. I can see why. He has got heavy hands, so I will be holding my breath for 7.5 minutes. So I'll be blue in the face. But if this hits, yeah, I think Imanol is dangerous early, but Borjas is a striker, and he's a very evasive striker. He doesn't get hit cleanly very often. So I'm figuring that, and also he's Peruvian, right? So the elevation shouldn't be too much of an issue for him. I'm just banking that he can survive for 7.5 minutes. I personally think that Imanol round 3 or decision might be a play that I might add. Then we've got Javier Reyes, basically to win every round or finish. Again, not a big play, small play here, but that was my read on the fight. Reyes is very dangerous in all facets of the fight. Having said that, DeAndrade is tough. He will survive. He had a fight against Miles Johns where he basically lost every round. So I think there's a precedent here that he's on the decline. Give me Reyes here. And then I parlayed Shirez and Reyes. And I think that, the parlay that Will has it is a safer one, Shirez and Luna. So I would opt for that first. I just felt like the Luna line was so juiced that I wanted a bit more. Got greedy. We'll see how that goes. Right. Let's hear from Josh.
Yeah, usual stuff from me, I guess, except that there is no odd bets here, and I'll explain why soon. But first of all, we'll go for the parlay. Francis Marshall sub points, only because he is fighting a very terrible Eric Silva, who is old and hasn't really fought that well in the UFC. And Marshall is the all-American wrestler kind of guy, so I expect some sort of sub or at least a grappling domination in that fight. Karikate, my new line, I believe the Montenegro Karikate fight is off, and Karikate is fighting someone else now. In which case, good on her. Even more reason to take her at moneyline odds. Maybe, I don't know. I'm an idiot. But Perez Chiasson over 2.5 rounds is pretty much what Will said, really. So that I feel even more confident now about that. Imanol Rodriguez carries sub. I feel like he's just gonna run through Borjas here. I cannot see a situation in which he doesn't. If he doesn't, then I'm gonna be shocked. But if he does, then it's just a fate thing, right? And then Vera Martinez goes the distance, which is pretty much what I was yapping on about before. I didn't see a finish happening anytime soon. As for the alt bet, typically when it comes to my picks, I'm a very favorite heavy picker, right? I mean, I pick who's going to win, yada yada yada. Alt bets go against that pick. In this case, I cannot see an underdog winning that much in this event. It's going to be a favorites bloodbath kind of thing, or whatever you want to call it, like a favorites tidal wave tsunami, you know, one of those things. So the alt bets are not going to be in play that much this event. So yeah, just a parlay thing from me.
Yeah, that's it for UFC Mexico City and the breakdown. We'll be back next week. Is next week's card even worse, guys? I can't remember, but I think it is.
It's the Oliveira Holloway BMF belt.
Oh, okay.
Pay-per-view,
That'll be better. Okay, so is that 326?
Not quite.
It's UFC 326, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll be back with that one. Thanks as always for tuning in. We'll see you on the next episode.